Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Crash, and today we are ranking the Shonen Jump, the Weekly Shonen Jump rookies of 2023. We do this pretty much every year at the end of the year, or at the beginning of the next year, actually. If this is your first time here, what we normally do is that a couple weeks ago sent you sent you a form for you guys to vote on your favorite and least favorite rookies that were started previous year, and from that I made a list of the best and the worst, and then I got my two other judges and myself to do our personal rankings, and today we're gonna go essentially make an average of all of them, and we're gonna go through them from worst down to the best. My guests are the person who's been here since the very beginning, Axel A. Blaze. Say hello, or don't.
Hello, I'm still alive.
He is. And this time we have Trenton, who just started a channel in 2023, going to Weekly Shonen Jump, and thought it was going to be fun to have him here. If you want to say hello.
Howdy.
So again, the reason why I have these two is because they have read and they are reading every single Weekly Shonen Jump series. They have been doing that for a while, so they know the state of the magazine as it is right now. They know how it has been in the previous couple of years as well, and they know every single series that has been through the magazine, at least this decade. So I think all of their opinions will be interesting to go through, and they know this better than anyone else. I would say that even better than me. And they also have their own channels if you guys want to check them out. Before we jump into the list, I do want to say that this is the second recording we are doing. We recorded this a couple of days ago, and I messed up. We didn't get my sound. I thought about how I could do just like recording over, like dubbing myself. But
And we told him no.
Yeah,
No, we'll just
Yeah.
re-record it.
We'll
It's fine.
yeah. So thank you guys again for joining. Like, the previous recording was almost 3 hours. I'm hoping this time will be a little bit shorter. We can be a little bit more concise. But yeah, we are gonna jump into the list. Number 11. It's Head Gill. It got 15 positive points. It got 275 negative points, with a total of negative 260. It got number 11, dead last on the voters list, and number 11 on my personal list. It ranked number 10 on Axel's, and it ranked number 9 on Trenton's. I think that the reason why this one got dead last is because it is just a generic battle shonen. We have a lot of them over the years. I think people are kind of tired of it. I don't think it is a manga that really gave anything new to the genre. In my opinion, it felt very much like Demon Slayer with a paint coat of like Viking manga. I think even like the main character having the exact same design as Rengoku helped that feeling. So yeah, for me, it just that last because of it. It was extremely boring. I think at least the other ones were kind of like bad, had a little bit more going for them. This one really did not, even though maybe technically we can consider it to be slightly better than some of the others that are here that last. But yeah, since you guys did ranked it slightly higher, what is you guys' opinions of it?
So, I mean, I think I do want to clarify. I categorize this more as like an adventure manga than a straight up battle manga.
Yeah, I generally put them together. But I see your point.
And that's fair, like, because when you think about it, like, anytime anybody is just like, oh, there's fighting involved, battle manga, it's just like, okay, I get it. But like at the same time, this one did have a bit of a focus on the world itself. So I mean, that's at least what I would think. I mean, it's completely fair to still categorize it as a battle manga just because you had one in almost every chapter anyway. But
it's more One Piece than Bleach, I guess we can say that.
right. Well, considering that they're fighting dead guys,
Yeah, but
the Bleach comparison is accurate, but I digress. Um, so I didn't think Icehead Gill was the worst. I like you said, I had it at number 10. But the biggest problem that Icehead Gill had was its bad main character. And it's not the only one that is out of these rookies that had a bad main character. But for Icehead Gill, that was definitely the thing that really held it back. Because there were a lot of elements to Icehead Gill that I did like. I liked the art. I really liked the liches, the Viking aspect to it. There were a lot of good things that were involved. It's just that Gil sucked as a character. Like the whole like, oh, I'm afraid to eat alone kind of thing. It wasn't endearing. It was more annoying with his like delivery on things. And honestly speaking, it just was a self-fulfilling prophecy of like, I'm the best with axes. And it's just like, oh boy,
yeah.
manga terminology right there. But you're gonna be good at axes, all right. But not that it was the quickest axed series, as Trenton can definitely elaborate further on that. But it wasn't something, I didn't feel it was the worst. It had good elements to it, but like it was dead on arrival with that best at axes comment.
At least in the West, I feel like everyone was like joking about it from chapter 1, and even more so
Yeah.
when the manga ended.
Yeah,
Mhm.
as soon as he said like I'm the best with axes, or even like as soon as we knew he had an axe, we were like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is gonna be memed. But yeah, I said Gil is 9 for me, so it's a little bit higher than the other two's lists. I pretty much agree with a lot of what Excellent Crash said. I do think I like Gil as a character a bit more. I understand he's annoying. I kind of find him a bit cute. He does remind me of like Gon and stuff. You get that comparison a lot with Hunter x Hunter, and he just doesn't have the depth. Not that the manga really had enough time to establish that, but I don't think he had the best first impressions either. The art is good, like Axel said. The concepts and the ideas with the liches and the Viking realm is really fresh. Like I don't think we've seen anything like that in Jump, maybe ever. Um, but yeah, then it's the other stuff that drags Gil down. Like other than its characters, I think pacing for me was the biggest one. Once you get about, I want to say like past halfway in, there's a forest arc where the pacing I think just gets shot immediately. It just starts rushing things. It starts throwing everything out, like random doohickeys, tons of different characters, and usually a lot of axed manga. Like sometimes they do rush their endings, but I felt like Gil kind of was a step before that. Like there were quite a few chapters it started rushing from. Instead of like rushing from the last like few, like something like Red Hood, I felt like Gil definitely rushed more towards the end, and that definitely lowered my opinion of the manga, since like its ending half wasn't very enjoyable to read. Uh, but there's a quality to Gil, I think, that keeps it from being like the dead last thing. I definitely don't think it's a good manga, but it has a bit of that axed manga charm, which I like, which you'll see from time to time when you read a lot of Jump Axed manga. And it just had that for me, so that's why it's 9 instead of like 11.
Like you mentioned, it had one of the three. I said two typical, and just alluding to the previous recording, the three types of endings that an X manga can have.
Yeah.
You either have the super rush ending to try and get to your finishing point and just kind of throw out pacing out the window. You have the Axe manga that will just kind of end things where the current arc is and look toward the future kind of thing. And we have both of these endings for some of the axed manga on this list. And then, like Crash said, if you're a gag series, you can just go balls to the walls, crazy.
Yeah, penis world.
But that's typically more of a gag manga kind of ending. But Head Gill had the rush towards an ending type of ending. We have another one on this list that is that type, and then there is a third one on this list that is the other type. Foreshadowing.
What I'll say about like the liches though is that I don't see how the liches are much different, like for example like the demons in Demon Slayer in terms of how they work, and I feel like a lot of the times we see this time and time again in Jump where sometimes they're curses, the others they're liches or demons or shinigamis. They have like different names, but they don't really work that different from one another. A lot of times they feel like paint coats again. They don't have like this one really unique trait that distinguishes them. That's why this one was for me very much like Demon Slayer, just a different setting.
So what you're saying, Crash, is that Head Gill is an Exorcist manga.
Oh no.
Essentially,
I guess, yeah.
It kind of it is. It annoys me because even when it's not, it kind of is. Like even with like something like Doron Dororon, it kind of is not directly, but it's always like ghosts, monsters, like I don't know.
Close enough.
Yeah, it always is like similar. So number 10, it is News Exorcist. It got 77 positive votes, but it got the biggest number of negative votes, 282, total of negative 205. It ranked number 9 on the voters list. It ranked number 7 on Axel's. It ranked dead last number 11 on Trenton's, and it ranked number 9 on my list. So I think News Exorcist got a lot of hate because a lot of people are kind of like comparing it to Roboco, which as a Roboco fan, I feel a little bit insulted, but I see the point where it is the new poster child of this manga survived, but mine didn't. Where a lot of people don't like this manga. It is still ongoing. It seems like it is going to remain that way. It doesn't seem like it is on any current danger of being canceled, at least not anytime soon. And because of that, a lot of people do dislike it. It is getting a lot of hate. Though, however, as you can see, we did get 77 positive votes, so there are still, even in the West, a lot of fans. But it seems like it is in Japan that we are getting a lot of people really enjoying it. I don't necessarily understand why. For me, this manga, it has a couple things that I do like. That's why I ranked it a little bit higher than some of the others. In the sense where I do like the kind of like slice of life elements of it. I like New as a character. I like the comedy of it. I think the manga has a lot of really funny moments. The art can be good at times. News, like the panel where we get to see how she really looks, is really good. However, then we have a lot of things that, to me, they don't really work. We have like the entire romance of it, the ecchi parts that it seems to have dropped the etchiness in recent chapters, but it was there for a while and it didn't work. It did not work at all, in my opinion. And then of course we got the biggest offender in my personal opinion, which is the main character. In my opinion, he's worse than Gill. He is not even annoying. It's just boring. It doesn't feel like he's doing anything at all in the story other than making it worse. He's not the kind of like main character who actually is progressing the story. Like the story is getting progressed exclusively by New and other characters. He's there for it. But he's not even like a cool reactionary character. Like I think like for example a Denji from Chainsaw Man, where he's a reactionary character, but the story is made with that in mind. With New Exorcist, it doesn't seem like that's the case. So I don't know, it is my vote for one of the worst main characters in like Weekly Shonen Jump as a whole. and that really puts the manga down when you have a main character that is that bad. But yeah, Trenton, why do you think this is the worst?
I mean, first off, just like you said, Gakuro is not a great main character. He's really boring. I think part of that reason is he's kind of self-inserty. I've heard some people describe Nue actually as like a light novel-esque like series. It's kind of trashy. It's got like bits of ecchi and romance, and it's pulling all sorts of tropes out of its bag. One of the worst ones being the sister character who is not blood related, which is like
Yeah.
the
Cardinal sin of the West.
the that moment made me audibly just gasp in frustration when I read it.
I saw you put on my Discord because we have like a big new fan on my Discord, and I saw you like, no, New is bad because of this panel.
This one panel like invalidates any positives Nue has garnered.
Yeah.
It's really got to work if I'm gonna ever call it good. That's for sure. Other things I don't like about it, actually the artwork. It's like fine overall. Most Jump series are fine. They're actually really well drawn, but when it's up against other things, it just doesn't cut it for me. And it does some like cardinal sins where a couple of the female characters, the kind of two first ones, they look really similar. At least when they're not colored. Just their hair, their faces, I find it difficult to tell them apart sometimes, or did anyway. And then there's one page in particular, which is like the worst offense of this, and it's this battle scene with Nue when the school gets invaded early on-ish. And there's just tons of battle lines and speed lines, and just it's hard to tell what's happening. It is just a mess of effects, essentially. There's not a cool composition going on or anything. It's just messy battle art, which sucks. You want to tell like what's going on. You're reading it because it's a manga, it's a visual medium, and its battles just aren't great, I don't think. There are a couple of good art pieces, though. People point out the Nue design. I think that's really cool when she's in a like monster form. Hope we get more of that stuff. That stuff's really cool, but it's pretty subpar overall. And I just would rather something else in Jump. It just tries a lot of things. It tries to be an action series. It tries to be an ecchi series. Bits of romance in there, but it doesn't do any of them. Not even great, good. Like, it's all either subpar or bad. And that's why it's the lowest for me. I just don't enjoy reading it every week.
It's definitely a jack of all trades but master of none series, like you said. Like it just incorporates a lot of things, but it never has any one thing that it truly excels at. I don't know, I definitely agree. I'm not gonna stick around on it too much. Gakuro is not a good character. He's just very wishy-washy. He's just like, I want to do good things, but like blah, 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 like just can't speak properly until it's, you know, the last 5 pages of the manga chapter. But I digress. It's got a lot of good elements to it, but the way that it's presented is just average. Not really great. You had people that were like going nuts over it at one point because they introduced a Xenoblade to it, and it wasn't like the game Xenoblade. It just a sword had the name Xenoblade in it, and people are like, "Whoa, trending!" And it there's not a lot of great things to Nue. I didn't have it as low, just because I couldn't put it above some of the Axed series from this list, and the other reason is, despite any complaints that we have, to Crash's point, because of Nue's sales, it does have a bit of cushion. So of the 11 series that we have on this list that have had sales so far, Nue and only one other have had sales that are considered good for a manga. where the first volume in the first week sold about 20,000 units. Which, for some people that think like, oh, you're only a good manga if you're selling hundreds of thousands of units. Here's the thing. When your manga reaches the top 50 in Oricon, that is good, period. Because there are hundreds of manga that are being sold at any given time. And they track backlog sales as well. So if you have a series that actually manages to get in the top 50, that is a big deal. And so, as it is, because this is a series that sold 20,000 units plus with its first volume, that gives it safety compared to some of the rank and file introduced and axed in 2 to 3 cycle manga that only sell, 3 to 4,000 units in their first week. Now, that being said, does that mean that Nue is safe forever? Absolutely not. There is always that possibility that the magazine could get filled with other series that, sell and exceed what Nue is doing. It's going to be an uphill battle, but, sometimes that stuff happens. On top of that, too, there's always the possibility that, the manga itself could be switched to a different service or something. But like Roboco, it's one of those series where it's going to stick around despite what people might think in the West, just because it's got enough of a platform in Japan for it to keep on going. So whether you like it or not, Nue is here to stay, at least for a decent amount of time, if not longer.
People have been comparing it with the sales of Undead Unlock, and they aren't like Undead Unlock is still selling more, but it's not that different. I think like the first week at least is not that different between both series. Moving on to number 9, we got Do Retry. It got 13 positive votes, 233 negative, total negative 220. It got number 10 on the voters list, number 11 on Axel's, number 4 on Trenton, and number 10 on my list. So the reason why it got a little bit over new was because of Trenton putting on number 4.
Good.
And we will get to that. This is
Skewing the results.
This was one I kind of put it above I Said Gill. I think I interviewed the translator and the letterer for this manga and for another one that we'll be talking about, and I think we had a little bit of a conversation of this manga. I think they kind of like shifted me to put it a bit higher because they're so positive. Of course they are a little bit biased, but they were so positive about Do Retry, and I started like seeing it with different eyes, in the sense that yes, I do think a lot of the parts in this manga, a lot of parts of Do Retry are kind of worse than I Said Gill, just in terms of like execution, but the mangaka has a lot of charm to it, and the manga is still like a wild read in a way that I Said Gill isn't. So in some ways it is a little bit more fun to read. However, in that sense, that is also kind of like its downfall, because the manga starts very seriously. It starts with 2 poor kids post World War II, have like one of them is sick, the other one has to fight for her sister and gets into like boxing because he needs money, and it's very melodramatic, it's very sad. It is a plot kind of similar to one of the saddest movies of all time, Grave of the Fireflies. My girlfriend cried, I think, during the entirety of that movie. It is really, really sad, and kind of like, I guess people were kind of expecting Do Retry to, of course, obviously not be as sad as Grave of the Fireflies, but to kind of follow from the first chapter, it seemed at least to going to follow a little bit of more serious plot. However, cue chapter 3, cue the first fight. I think it was the first fight, or at least one of the very first fight, and we get this one dude with like a giant arm, one arm that's just giant, and it was so silly, and the manga never really returns from it. It continues to be like this wild, insane story that does not fit with the setup that the manga gave us. It really does not fit. I think if this was a different style of manga, different kind of manga, it would be much better. In the same way that the mangaka's previous manga, I think Bone Collection, even though a lot of people hate it, I thought it was better in that sense because it was a manga that we could enjoy the insanity for what it was, and it could still make the manga a little bit better overall. Yeah, in this one it did not. That is my opinion of it.
Yeah, it's once they introduced Mr. Massive Arm, that is absolutely where it started going downhill. Because the thing is, Do Retry is not Elusive Samurai. You can't take the... With Do Retry, you couldn't take the historical setting and add in the wacky, cartoonish characters and make it work. Up to that point, it was doing a pretty good job of like having a serious setting and like having like a plucky main character that was going to work his way up the ladder. And on top of that, like you had at one moment where you had a fight between Kuroiwa, who was like the number one fighter under the boss, having a regular match in the ring, but they had, anime style boxing that was really good. If we would have had that instead of like the wacky proportion characters and whatnot, we could have been talking about a different manga entirely, and it could have been doing better. But it is what it is. This is also another one where it had the axed manga ending where it accelerated toward an end with an absolutely absurd final battle. And one of the things I will give credit for this is that I remember at one point there was a post on Twitter that was complaining about the use of do retry as a translation in the second to last chapter. And I thought it was a good one in comparison, like where the main character, Aozora, was like, no, this isn't a do or die retry. This is a do retry, meaning that there is no dying. We are doing this. We are making it through this. And I thought, it was a good example. It wasn't a one-for-one translation, but the thing is, when you are in translating things for the West, you are trying to interpret it in a way that is appealing in the West. Similar to how, like, if you're, having a character in Japan that's calling, or a younger sibling calling their older sibling like big bro or like big sis, it's like, we don't do that in the West. We just call people by their names. But I digress. Do Retry ended up at the bottom of the list for me just because it became a disappointment in that I thought I thought it started out great and then just kind of went downhill after that. I still enjoyed it. I do want to point that out. And I am glad at the very least that it started the trend this year of introducing more sports manga back into the magazine, because we had been so devoid of that for a long time. Besides Blue Box, which uses sports as a vehicle rather than, the focus.
Not a sports manga. I will always say that. Not a sports manga.
I know. Even though it does have good sports moments, but I digress. Let's talk to Mr. Skew the Results by putting it at number 4, was it?
So why did I skew the results? Why is it at number 4? This one is kind of just like a very pure reason. I just really enjoyed Retry. It's from an author I like. I really like Bone Collection. It has a similar amount of fun from it. What I didn't expect was the initial setup and premise, like you guys talked about, like that serious World War II stuff. But then it quickly devolves into these wacky gimmick fights. I definitely felt once we hit the big arm guy, it was over, and I was like, okay, this isn't staying. This is gone in like maybe 15 more chapters. I'm gonna just enjoy it for what it is. the arm guy fight and then the kind of drug user crazy guy fight, those two arcs weren't the best, but after kind of Aozora gets his resolve and he has to go fight his dad, which I thought was a really cool just twist, I guess, I started to really enjoy the series again after enjoying it from the beginning. There is just such a earnestness to Retry. I feel it just really tackles one of the core tenets of shonen manga, which is never giving up, always believing in yourself, and it just wears that on its sleeve. And sometimes I just want to read shonen manga and have a story that's just about that. That's kind of why I love Shonen Jump so much. And it just does that through thick and thin, even making his father, who taught Aozora the ideals of always believing in his heart, like he turned his back on them, and then his own son has to come and show him like what the right path is again. I really like that. And it also could show like, well, maybe sometimes it is a bit difficult to not believe in yourself. Like really bad things can happen, like war and stuff, that could shake your resolve. And it could have explored that in a really cool way if it had more time, but it didn't, sadly. And it also kind of feeds into the final chapter. So it did have the rush to the end, but then you just have, it was like the week before it ended, the manga kind of ends, but there's like one more chapter, and I was like, what are they gonna do? And then the final chapter is the kind of future bloodline of Aozora, that family. We have a shoemaker who is kind of struggling with his dreams, with his life, and it's just this small little chapter of showing that resolve and that belief in yourself, I guess. It just continues on, and I really like that message and that kind of theme, and it feels very ingrained in Jun Kirarazaka's works. He's an author I really admire. His author's notes for Retry were really nice. He seemed to really just want to keep trying, and at the end he seemed pretty positive and pumped. Even though his series was ended, he's gonna keep trying, and I think he did release a one-shot recently in Jump Giga, or maybe it's upcoming or something like that. So it's really cool to see him back so quickly. Yeah, that just kind of encapsulates why I just enjoy the series so much. It was just a really fun ride. It also had some really nice artwork. Loved just the way he illustrated the setting and his characters, the way Aozora kind of changes as he develops in the short amount of time he has is very cool. He goes from kind of rounded and kind of, I guess, malleable and soft to a bit more angular and heroic, which I thought was a really cool design decision. And then some of the typography and lettering in this is really cool as well, when there's like lots of punches and stuff. So just kind of ticked a lot of boxes for me. So that's why it's up so high.
Jumping into number 8, we got Shadow Eliminators, the newest manga from Weekly Shonen Jump. It got 30 positive points, 169 negative points, meaning 139 negative total. It got number 8 from voters, number 9 from Axel, number 10 from Trentin, and number 8 from myself. And again, this is a manga that we don't have a lot to go by because we had just a couple chapters. However, what we got, it felt like fandoms here just not as good. For the most part, I did enjoy some parts of it. At least I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the two main characters. I think the art is good. However, where I think it fails is the pacing, essentially. I think most of the chapters, they're episodical and they don't really work that well. I feel like they're kind of rushed in each episode, like the beginning, middle, and end feel like kind of rushed. And then it's the art, the paneling. I feel like the manga feels a little bit busy in the sense where there's a lot of panels to make sure that all of these things are happening because the mangaka has a lot to do in these chapters. And we don't really get enough space to feel the fights, for example, or feel the powers. Something like Phantom Seer or MamaYuyu and Roji from the 2000s, which is very similar to these two manga, had like this double spreads or just single pages where we had like this huge panel like showing the monster, showing the powers. And I think like those were the best parts. I think one of the reasons why people really enjoyed Phantom Seer was because the arts and the monsters in it were so good. It was generally like a horror manga, even though it was battle shonen. There were like genuine terrifying panels of it. I think people really liked that. In Shadow Eliminators, we don't get that. It's really even hard to say if the designs of the monsters are good or not. They feel good, but we don't get to see them fully to make sure that they were. And because of that, I also think the relationship between the two main characters seems forced, honestly. I see what the mangaka is trying to go for, but I just don't think it's really working right now. Maybe as we get more chapters and we get to see them, the chemistry between them over time, I get to enjoy them more. But right now, even though I like them individually, I don't think they really work together in the way that the mangaka wants them to work together. I think that is essentially it in terms of my opinion. I will also say that I'm kind of surprised, however, that how negative the reception has been in Japan, at least. In the West, it seems to be more or less what I expected. A lot of people are calling it kind of boring, disappointing, blah blah blah. But in the West, in Japan, it seems to be like the worst received manga of the year. It got trending about how bad people feel about it on Twitter, on Japanese Twitter at least. And I don't think it's that bad. I think the other three manga that we've talked about, News Exorcist, Retry, and Head Gill, definitely were worse. But Japan does not agree. They hate it.
So Shadow Eliminators, bit of a generic name, bit of a generic manga so far. I don't feel like it's the worst thing ever, and it hasn't had the most time to do what it wants to do, but it just isn't grabbing me so far. It is at number 10 for me, so that's pretty low, but I don't like heavily dislike it or anything. I'm a little bit surprised with the negative kind of reception it's had, but it is just kind of like fine so far, which isn't good. The negative reception in Japan might be due to maybe it's just bad, but the author did say in a comment, I believe, that they messed up their I think their composition or their paneling or something. And I definitely feel that, and that feeds into, I think, the like clutteredness you were talking about, Crash, of some of the pages and stuff, as well as the pacing of some of the chapters. It definitely doesn't nail them. That comparison with like MamaYuyu and Roji is definitely, I think, really good, because that series can tell a short story in one chapter related to like two people like solving a case involving spirits and stuff really well. While Shadow Eliminators, it feels very clunky, very cluttered, and I don't think it really has anything else like going for it. There's nothing special to me that stands out other than some of the character designs I really like, but the monsters and everything else, they're kind of just fine. I just don't really have much to say about it, and I think that's why it's so low for me.
It's painfully average. I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, like, it's not that it's necessarily doing anything terribly wrong. It's just that it's not doing enough to really have a bigger impact. Like, the fact of the matter is, Exorcist manga are a dime a dozen. We've already proven that Head Gill is also an Exorcist manga, so like several in one year, not great. But it's one of those things where it's not doing anything new, like, at all. Like, you've got a main character that's kind of like loosey goosey, like he's like everything's chill, but like he has fighting powers, and he's got like a a somewhat dark past, but he's using it for good. You've got a secondary character who's just like the straight and narrow guy that doesn't like the main character at first, but then comes to like him and like he gets involved and whatnot. You've got a younger looking grandma, and Don already covers that way better. So it's just, you know, whatever. Like, and then to what you guys have already said, like, it feels cramped. It feels disjointed. There's never enough time for anything to truly breathe. And for us to be like, wow, like that had a lasting impact, because it doesn't. Like, it ends in like two pages. It's just like, well, that was the thing that we kind of led up to for half the chapter, and then just kind of womp womp, it happened. I have it at number 9 just because it hasn't done enough to do anything for me. I have it lower than Nue's Exorcist because I at least enjoy Nue's Exorcist a little bit more than Shadow Eliminators. I'm just gonna be honest with that. I agree with Japan in terms of it having a, you know, more of a negative opinion towards it. Do I think it was the worst thing of the year so far? No. And even when it does wrap up, it's not gonna be the worst for me unless it just has. It would have to introduce a sister to the main character that is not blood related. It would have to all of a sudden completely derail the plot for it to be anywhere near as bad as my opinion of Ice Head Gill or Do Retry. But to me, this is another one where its fate is sealed. It has zero motion in like any space. Like, I don't talk about this series at all in any group chats I'm in. Like, at all. There's zero discussion on it. Like, even if a series is bad or doing something bad, at least it's being talked about. Do you guys know anyone that's like actively talking about this manga, like in any space?
Like, after the first week, no, not at all.
I don't think I've seen even like a single Twitter post after like the release day.
This is one of those series where I genuinely believe, like, in 5+ years, nobody's going to remember this series. It's going to be a blip in the radar that people are like, oh, that was a thing, I guess. Like, because there's no impression. Just, again, with how many Exorcist mangas and everything else there is, like, it doesn't do anything to stick around whatsoever.
People are just tired of I am tired of Exorcist manga, at least I'll say that.
Yeah.
We don't need more. We already have them. Jump just keeps liking them. They really like them. I don't know why. Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things where people say they want new ideas until they don't. And they then gravitate towards the things that, you know, are the norm, the things that are tropey and whatnot. You know, like we said, Ice Head Gill did a Viking Lich setting, which I've never seen Viking stuff be a main theme in Shonen Jump ever, and I could be wrong. There could be something in the long history of it, but I kind of doubt it. Like, the only Viking manga that you really talk about outside of Ice Head Gill is Vinland Saga. Like,
if there
that's it.
If there is a Viking manga, Trenton will find it eventually in this series.
I can't think of any Viking stuff from my research.
I've looked at every single cover of every single series in Weekly Shonen Jump. Of course, I don't remember them all, obviously, but I don't remember a Viking one, to be fair.
Right. And again, it was different, but like, people are like, don't really care. I mean, granted, we didn't like the main character, so I mean, you can't really say anything in that regard. But then we fall into the pattern of liking the same things, and so I think that's what like the Jump editors and whatnot are like, it's just like, oh, like people like this, like they'll potentially like this,
Yeah.
and then we don't.
And then they cut it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's easy.
So it's a catch-22. I think that's just kind of what it is that like they think like, oh, throwing in an Exorcist manga is safe, and if it does well, great. If it doesn't, whatever.
And then moving into number 7, we got 2 on Ice, the second sports manga of the list. 45 positive points, 102 negative points, with a total of negative 57. It got number 7 on the voters list. It got number 8 on Axel's, number 3 on Trenton's, and number 6 on mine. I think 2 on Ice. On the previous recording, I actually hadn't caught up with because I fucked up again, but I did now. Now I'm caught up with it. It's a good manga, I think. It is. I will say that it's not as good as the other sports manga that we'll be talking about later on this list, in my opinion. But I do like the atmosphere of it. I do like it. Everything feels really beautiful. Feels really sparkly. I kind of want to say almost like a shoujo-esque manga, but I feel like people that read shoujo are gonna punch me in the face.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I know it is not 100%, but it does feel, it has that like that softness that I find on a lot of like shoujo that I read. I do find it on 2 on Ice in terms of like the presentation of the manga and of the panels. I do like the 2 characters in the way that they relate to each other. I do like the conflict between the female lead has with how she is a girl and how like she can't continue to pursue singles because most of like the female singles, they reach their peak at a younger age compared to like male competitors where they reach it at a much later down the line. And so she has to pursue the singles, and then we go into the main character that has to decide, where do I want singles or do I want to do pairs, even though maybe with singles I can find better fulfilling and have a better career. And that has been the bulk of these first couple of chapters that we had from 2 on Ice, and I've been enjoying it. Now what we get later on is mostly like the main rival antagonist kind of character. I think is interesting, and then we get a little bit more of the relationship evolving, kind of like sprinkling the romantic parts of it, which I think is working as well. But it is that prologue, those first like I think like 10 or 11 chapters that I really enjoyed so far. There isn't really anything that I have to say negative about this manga. I don't like their faces. Just there's something about like their size. It doesn't work for me, especially when they're kids. But that is like extreme nitpicking when I have like Nero as one of my like top 5 Weekly Shonen Jump manga that I heard is like it's really bad. The other manga that is over it is just manga that I have a lot more stuff that I enjoyed, not necessarily because I think 2 on Ice is bad.
2 on Ice, in the same vein that Shadow Eliminators is the Phantom Seer at home, 2 on Ice is the Medalist at home. The really unfortunate thing for 2 on Ice is that Medalist is a much better ice skating manga that is happening at the same time. Granted, it is a monthly series compared to the weekly 2 on Ice that we have, but Medalist just does a lot of things better than 2 on Ice. And I think the biggest one is that Medalist is a lot more dynamic in its art and presentation compared to 2 on Ice. When it comes to sports series, because you are at least typically a manga that's a little bit more grounded in reality, you have to make things look interesting and dynamic for people to have their attention be focused in on it. And 2 on Ice, like, it has good art, it has nice pages and whatnot, but like it doesn't have anything that's necessarily like bam, like cool, like I am focused in on this moment. Because like you mentioned, Crash, a lot of it is very soft. Like the whole manga as a whole just feels soft, other than the main antagonist guy who has a bone to pick with our female lead, but like the rest of the manga as a whole is very soft. I think it's not a bad series. This is one of those ones where like the main character has all this potential. He was somebody that like all of his practicing that he did was like at this like pond like near his home in the dead of night as he was practicing the moves that Kisara did and like the tapes that he had. And I really like the dynamic, like you mentioned too, that he has with the main female lead, because it's one of those things where like because they're adolescents, and like he saw her as a skater before he saw her as a girl. There is interesting, developments, mentally and emotionally with that. Problem is that like it's got no traction. This one came out in the trio with Kagurabachi and MamaYuyu, and there was a lot more focus and attention on those two than there was on Two on Ice. Despite the fact that Weekly Shonen Jump was just like, you all get 3 color pages each for whatever reason. Just it's not bad, but the problem is it's in a magazine where it doesn't have enough time to shine, and when there are 2 other sports series that came out around similar times that are better, Two on Ice just kind of falls short in that regard, at least in my opinion. But Trenton ranked it higher, so I'm gonna let him tell us why.
Yeah, much like I guess Retry, this is again high just because I personally really enjoy it. A big reason is something Crash said. It's the atmosphere, it's the softness the manga has. I just love the artwork. I love how everything is just drawn and illustrated. The characters, I really like how they're designed, even though Crash doesn't like their faces and stuff. I really like them for some reason. I don't know why. Like, the way the author draws hair and eyes and expressions, I just really dig. And then it isn't as good as Medalist, but anytime ice skating is drawn in a manga, it just looks really beautiful. It's such a nice looking sport, and I don't think it quite has the dynamism, like Axel said, that Medalist might have, but it still looks really pretty, and I like looking at it, and that makes me happy. So there's a big reason why it's quite high.
I did want to interject real
yeah.
quick, just because you mentioned ice skating looking beautiful any other time. I am also reminded the fact that Dog's Red is going on right now, the ice hockey manga
I need to
by
catch
the
up
creator
on that.
of Golden Kamui.
Yeah.
And there are moments where the ice skating looks beautiful, but there's also times where it just looks dirty as hell, but that's also the charm of Dog's Red.
If it's Noda, I'm sure he'll be able
it's
to.
exactly. But go on. I just wanted to interject about that real quick.
So the other reason I really like Two on Ice is its just approach to romance and relationships. You have the 2 main characters, and there's that interesting build up, like you said, Axel, where the main boy sees the main girl, Kisara, as a skater first, and then gradually develops feelings. I just really like that. I really like how it's being built up. There's a purity to their relationship. It's really nice. I like the kind of banter they have with each other as well. And then the other characters I find really interesting. You have the twins, and that's a really interesting like relationship dynamic to have while skating. And then you have one of the newer couples introduced, the exes, which is just very funny and weird, and it's just a really interesting way to look at all these different groups of people. And that's what I've like come to enjoy out of it, as it's gone on, as it's introduced these couples, and also the prospect of, well, how are our 2 main characters going to progress as well. It's just a really nice, I guess, manga to wind down with as well after you've read like all the big battle shonens and like funny gag manga. It's just really chill, and I like that we have a manga like this in Jump at this time, but I also acknowledge that it probably won't be here for long, sadly.
So moving on to number 6, kind of like the half a point of the list, we got another sports manga. We got Green Green Greens. It got 124 positive points, 49 negative, total of 75. I just wanted to note that like number 6 and number 7. Number 7 marks all the negative points, all the manga that got negative points, and from here on out is all the manga that got positive points on the list. And the difference is like negative 57 to 2 on Ice to 75 positive to Green Green Greens. So that's a huge difference. But yeah, Green Greens was number 6 on voters, number 5 on Axel's, number 8 on Trenton's, and number 4 on my list. If you follow my channel, you may have seen a video that I did a couple weeks ago where I talk about the second chapter of Green Green Greens, kind of like compare it to me and my channel and how I relate to the main character. That is part of why I enjoy this manga. I really enjoy how the main character falls in love with golf, how he is essentially this guy who is doing decently at most things, but he doesn't really care about anything. He hasn't really found something that he loves until he almost by accident like comes across golf and learns to fall in love with it and learns to love trying his best to improve even if just a little bit. And of course, that video I compare that's kind of how I feel about video making. So I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the main character. I enjoyed the relationship between the main character and the female lead. I think especially when I think one of my favorite moments of chapter 1 was when the female lead was just like, I hate you because of how you been like. She basically destroys his entire personality. Like the whole ranking people through their money and everything, and she just destroys everything about him. I love that, and how she eventually comes across and he starts to change over this last couple of chapters. Has been really fun. The golf is, I would say this is one where the golf is actually really dynamic, which I think golf is a hard sport to be dynamic. It's just a guy doing it. Bah! But some double spreads, like some panels are really, really cool. One of the last chapters was really, really awesome. And yeah, this is not my favorite sports manga of the year. There's one that I enjoy a bit more, but overall I think it is still a pretty solid manga. I think it is a vast improvement over the mangaka's previous manga, Beast Children, which had I liked one of the side characters and a little bit of dynamic between the two main characters, but other than that, it wasn't really that good. He has improved a lot, and I don't think Green 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 is gonna last necessarily, but I do hope it does, and if it doesn't, I do want to see how the mangaka come back with something potentially even better.
So for me, I rated it quite a bit lower than you guys. I think it's 8 out of 11. I don't dislike this by any means. This is probably a pretty good score since I tend to enjoy like most of the manga in Jump. But I do feel like Green Green Greens is something that hasn't quite like fully gripped me yet. Maybe when we get into like the first big match or whatever they call golf matches, I can't remember. But when we get a bit more match, okay. When we get a bit more substantial golfing, maybe I'll click with it a bit more. But I think it's good so far. It's at a good beginning. It's set everything up well. I like the main character. I think he has some interesting development to do. And the main female character as well, or the kind of heroine, she's also really cool. I'm looking forward to more of her. Yeah, art's good. Like Crash said, the double page, well, kind of double page spread we got recently was good as well. I don't have too much to say about it, other than if I compare this to something like Robot X Laserbeam, I think this is doing better for me personally. Main characters just more entertaining, and I wouldn't be sad if this stayed. I kind of hope the author does well and this gets to stick around for a bit.
I definitely agree in terms of hoping that this stays. Obviously, I put it at number 5. This is one where I really enjoyed it, and I didn't necessarily expect to enjoy it as much as I did. Similarly to how I didn't expect that I would enjoy Robot X Laserbeam as much as I did. Or golf in general, in that matter. I enjoy reading golf more than I enjoy watching golf, but I do enjoy playing mini golf, so that's still higher on the hierarchy. But no, so Green Greens has succeeded in being interesting so far in, several ways. Like Crash mentioned, it's been able to be dynamic because, I mean, the action of, the golf swing itself is a very dynamic movement. Unfortunately, there's not necessarily going to be a lot different with that other than drawing different characters doing things, so that will potentially be a challenge moving forward for keeping interest. But in what we've been seeing so far, it's been really good. I like our main character, Haku Yaisaki. I enjoy seeing that mental change from going to, you are defined by your net worth, to, oh, I actually really enjoy this. I didn't think I would enjoy this at all, but I really do. And he's a character that despite having a natural gift, that no one is able to figure out until the most recent chapter. And even then, he doesn't realize it himself. It was somebody else that noticed it. He's someone where he starts out and he is not naturally good at the sport itself. He is hitting hundreds of balls and only ever getting a good hit like here and there. So it's great to see his growth as a character in the few chapters that we've had, despite the fact that, while it might seem fast to some, and it seemed fast to Crash in our original recording of this, he is practicing a lot off screen. So much so to the point that, like, with the golf glove that he was given, he has burned a hole through it just due to the sheer amount of, balls he's been hitting again and again and again. What would normally take weeks upon weeks for somebody to, rip through a glove, he did it in the span of several days. So it just kind of goes to show that, like, he is that into this sport. And then again, to another one of Crash's points, I love that this is a step up from the Beast Children's, for the author of Beast Children from his previous manga. I think that it's done a lot better so far, and I really hope that it's able to succeed despite being in such a very cramped magazine. But it goes to show that, it's good for mangaka to be able to come back to the magazine with newer series. You might have some where, they flopped before and they flopped again. That was the case in terms of Do Retry. You have people that can flop the first couple times and then really succeed in the future. That was the case for, My Hero Academia and Black Clover. And then you could be like Ryuhei Tamura, where you succeed one time and then you come back and, like, not succeed, which was the case. Go ahead.
For not for Tabata, I will still argue that I think Angry Joker could have been a better manga than Black Clover.
Oh, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I'm just saying that in terms of actual reception and whatnot, Black Clover obviously did a lot better than Hungry Joker did. But yes, I agree. I absolutely 100% agree. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. But it's really great that we do get to see mangaka getting to come back, try again, and see what sticks this time around. And I genuinely do hope that Green Greens gets that opportunity. Whether or not it does, because of the state of this magazine, we'll see. But I think that it and the other sports manga that we have yet to talk about were really great, and they deserve a read if you haven't already.
Then on number 5, we have Kill Blue. 136 positive points, 59 negative, total of 77. It ranked number 5 on the voters, number 4 on Axel's, number 5 on Trenton's, and number 7 on mine. So this is one where I ranked it a little bit lower. And I think the reason for that is that I do enjoy Kill Blue. I don't think Kill Blue does anything that I love necessarily, though. But I think pretty much everything that it does solid to good. It has cool fighting scenes. I don't think they're not as good as Sakamoto's. I think that's probably one of the biggest problems I have with Kill Blue, is that it feels like kid Sakamoto, but Sakamoto is better. But then on the other hand, it is slightly moving away from it. It is becoming much more of a school life manga, and I think it is doing well. I like the characters. I enjoy their dynamics. I think the art style, while not as good as I expected from a mangaka who's the third manga on the magazine, because this is by the guy who did Kuroko no Basket and did Robot X Laser Beam, which you just talked about. This is actually my first manga from him that I'm reading. It's Kill Blue. So I don't know. I was kind of expecting better hearts from it. I will say, however, it's still good. It's still an art from a professional mangaka. And yeah, there's not a lot for me to talk about this manga because that's kind of how I feel. It is good. It's there. I read it and enjoy it and then kind of forget about it because I have a lot of other manga that I enjoy more. What I will say that I think it's worth discussing about this manga is I see a lot of people talking about the dynamic between the main character and the girls, because this is a middle-aged
allegations.
Man. Yeah. This is a middle-aged man who is turned into a child, middle schooler, I guess, and is put in a fake relationship with another middle schooler. But in the manga's defense, we get told over and over and over again, this is actually even one of the most recent chapters we got, or chapter, kind of like mini arcs, character arcs we had. It was like establishing that he does not care about these girls in a romantic way, or even in an attractive way. He does not care about them that way. He feels more of them like children, because they are children. And we've been telling that over and over and over again. I understand that some people may still feel kind of awkward about having a manga where a middle-aged man is put in this position, but I think the manga is able to avoid that in a lot of ways where others do not, because they don't want to. That's the plot. That's the point, I guess, not the plot. But yeah, that's all I have to say about Kill Blue.
Right. Despite the constant finding the allegations comments in every single chapter end on Manga Plus, and it gets tiring. Discuss the actual manga, for the love of God. Oh my God. Kill Blue is enjoyable. This is a dude who is a middle-aged guy who gets Detective Conan and is all of a sudden in middle school. And no, he's not going to be fawning over these, schoolgirls because they're the same age as his daughter. He says this time and time and time again. And again, for the people that are complaining, oh, well, these girls are having a crush on him. Yeah, of course they are, because they're schoolgirls. They don't know that he's an old guy in the body of a kid. It's just kind of how it is. And again, regardless of how many times that the author, like is clearly stating that, you have people that are making that comment every chapter, and it's just getting annoying. Like, just please stop. There's other things to discuss in it. Like what's refreshing about this is that, despite the fact that like he's this middle-aged assassin who's been trained for decades to be an assassin, he's this guy who is kind of hard-boiled, and like he, has an ex-wife at this point. He's somebody that, when given the opportunity to go undercover as a kid, all of a sudden discovers, oh, I like things that I never got to experience before. These are new feelings. Like, holy crap, I love school. Like, it's such an interesting character dynamic to be somebody who's just like, oh, like I'm just here for the job kind of thing, and it's just like, I love history. It's just like, okay, buddy. But it's the side characters that it introduces are interesting. You got ones that are absolutely weird, given the nature of this manga. You gotta like, it's typically the assassins that are weirder than the ones that are just the unicorns, the people that are like really good at the one thing that they do. But they have interesting dynamics. I think at some point we might see more of a shift to battle shonen, depending on how characters are like introduced. It might kind of take a twist, kind of similar to like Katekyo Hitman Reborn, in a way. For those that have like read that, like how like it has like the school days arcs, but then all of a sudden, like as we're like building up these like friends and whatnot, it turns into something later down the line. Because at the end of the day, we also have to remember that there's a major plot point of the fact that the reason why people are going after Norin is that she is the daughter to the head of a company, this pharmaceutical company, that has the capability to turn adults into kids with these bees. The bees. Like, there's stuff that's going on with this company that's, I'm interested to see what developments we see later on with it. Like, yes, we've got the school life, we've got the sports and whatnot, but like at some point we're gonna delve more into that, and I'm interested to see what direction that takes. And at the very least, this is a manga that's going to be safe for a while, because like I mentioned back with Nue, this is the other series introduced this last year where it had good enough sales, where like the first volume was selling like 20,000 units in its first week. This is one where it's got cushion. Like, this is one where, like, unless there's other stuff that comes in and surpasses it, it's going to be safe for a long enough time where it can experiment and dabble in other things that it's doing. So I'm interested to see where it goes. And I do recommend giving it a read, because yes, you can ignore the allegations, because the main character has no interest romantically in these girls. So stop, please.
Kill Blue, 5 on the readers poll, 5 for me. Finally, we agree on something. No, it's really solid. I enjoy Kill Blue. I do think like some chapters I like a lot, and some chapters I don't really care for, which is okay. Like reading weekly, that kind of happens, but I think it's a little bit more polarizing with Kill Blue specifically. The things I really like about it are Juzo, how he gets to experience being a kid again because he didn't have that proper experience beforehand. He gets to learn how to learn, and love that process, which is just really sweet. Just him fawning over his tests and studying is just really nice to see a character enjoying. He gets to learn about home ec as well, which is really cool, going into things like cleaning and cooking, which he likely never did before. But now he gets to understand kind of the joys of those things and making friends and stuff. And there's a real nice purity in that. He wants to protect his friends and the relationships around him, and understands like all the boundaries and stuff between his actual age and his like physical age. That brings up some really funny comedy beats as well, and I think the author's done a really good job at just putting a really nice line there, which is like, we're not going for this weird low-hanging fruit at all. We're gonna make some actually like kind of funny stuff happen. I do like how it juggles a lot of things like Nue, but does them good. Instead of ecchi and stuff, though, we have battle shonen mixed in with slice of life, which is really nice. And I think the slice of life stuff is maybe my favorite, but I would like to see a shift in battle, like now and again. The kind of baseball arc was cool. And if it does turn into something like Hitman Reborn, I'd be okay with that. If we get some like other cool characters, I guess we have a few. I really like. I think Tenma is the baseball. Well, the kind of
The
triathlete.
3-in-1 sports
Yeah,
guy. Yeah,
he's probably my favorite character. I really love him. Like, excellent addition to the cast. Norin is a great heroine as well. I really like her, and I'm excited to see how she factors into the story with her dad, because that's just this looming mystery that's been in the background. That might be a kind of negative I have, is we haven't really seen much of that for a while. But I guess the idea is we're meant to kind of coast along until Juzo befriends Noreen enough where he can get to go to her dad's like secret lab base tower, whatever it's gonna be.
Tower of Doom.
Yeah. Yeah, other than that, the art is a little lackluster for me. I think there's quite a lot of just white backgrounds, which happens it happens sometimes in manga. It's fine. Like, I understand every background can't be filled in, but it happens quite a lot in Kill Blue, and the color pages as well is something I find a little underwhelming. There's a certain style the author's going for, but I guess I don't appreciate it. It is a little boring to me, so that's a kind of negative, I guess. If the art was a little bit better, it might go up a few spaces.
he's at least able to draw action and whatnot enough. So that I do agree, though, that the backgrounds are very minimalistic in comparison. So
and it isn't like Bleach, where I feel like Bleach kind of works because of the palette of just pure blacks and pure whites.
Yeah.
Kill Blue does not have that.
Yeah, Kill Blue, it's like when people are just talking to each other sometimes, there's just like nothing else going on, and it feels a little absent.
Number 4, this was the one where in our first recording we kind of got surprised. Well, I didn't, because I already seen the list. But it is the big boy, the one you've heard about, Kagurabachi or Kagurabachi. I'll be saying Kagurabachi probably. It got the most number of positive points, 359. 58 negative points, total of 301. It ranked number 1 on the voters list. However, it ranked number 3 on Axel's, number 6 on Trenton's, and number 5 on my list.
So blame Trenton, people of the internet. It's all his fault. He's the one that stopped it from being number 1 or number 2. Pitchforks, bring out the pitchfork.
I mean, we didn't rank it number 1 either.
No, but he's the one that tanked it harder.
I think so. I got a lot of like quote retweets on my Twitter, on my tweet with the poll from Kagurabachi accounts, fan accounts. They are there. They're very active. They will find you. That's been my experience time and time again. They will find you, which kind of made it to number 1. Before that, it was number 2. I will say it is not like it isn't number 1 by a huge margin. Number 2 was very close to it, and while some people may think like, oh, they went and ruined the pool, I don't think so. I think the voters list is supposed to represent how the audience felt about these titles, and the truth is Kagurabachi was massive was the most popular title of the year. For a reason I picked it as the poster child of the thumbnail, because it is the one that everyone's gonna recognize, because it was talked about in a way that I haven't seen any other rookie manga being talked about. Not Sakamoto Days, not Blue Walks, not a Kanebanashi. I would even say not Samurai 8. I think, of course, Samurai 8 is popular because Naruto, but I don't know. Kagurabachi has been, I've seen it everywhere, at least for the first couple of weeks. Even before the chapter came out, everyone was talking about it. One of the reasons why I think it is too big, really big, or one of the examples I can tell to show how big it was, is that I saw a KFC Portugal hat with a Kagurabachi meme, which I know KFC is insane with its like social media ads, but still, KFC making a Kagurabachi meme. It is absolutely insane. It was everywhere for a couple of weeks. It then died down. It was very, very memed about. A lot of people were comparing it to Morbius, the movie, just the same kind of level of like meme. I would say that the difference between Kagurabachi and Morbius is that Kagurabachi is actually pretty good. I know if you've seen the memes only, you may think it is a very, very edgy manga. It is edgy in its presentation. It is violent in its fights. It has a very like serious deadpan main character. However, I will say that the manga, if you read it, is not really as edgy as you may think it is. I think the manga has a lot of like really soft moments. It has comedy relief characters. Honestly, I think the comedy in Kagurabachi is pretty good. I think the relationship that we have in the very first chapter between the main character Kagurabachi and his dad. He's not named Kagurabachi.
No, his name is Chihiro.
Just in case someone thought I was serious. But I think like him and his dad, the relationship between them is really good. And the fights are really good. That's probably the reason why I got a lot of attention. I still don't understand why it got as much attention as it did, but obviously the fights were the thing that a lot of people were locking on, and it makes sense because the double spreads, the action, the powers that these characters have, they all look really, really, really cool. It's a really cool manga to read. But it is a manga that is not just cool. I think it has a pretty solid story. Is it the best manga of the year? In my opinion, it isn't. I think it's solid. I think there's been better. According to your rankings, it also is not the best. But I think we can all agree that it is good, and I think people shouldn't just let the amount of memes make them feel that it isn't, because I think it's worth the read.
I also think it's really good, despite like it's 6 again. That's kind of, I guess, past halfway, but I really enjoy Kagurabachi. To be honest, I might be inclined to put it above Kill Blue, but I put it at 6, so that's where it's staying. It is just a really solid like action series right now, and it has a kind of its own thing going for it. Like JJK, I guess there's a bit more brutality to its fights. It's a bit more gory, got a lot more blood. That's cool sometimes and really enjoyable. The recent kind of just I guess Cha extraction mission we got, where Chihiro goes ham on the people who kidnapped her, was really cathartic, and is what I wanted from the series. Just Chihiro slicing up everyone, and then getting into a kind of cowboy-esque showdown with the current villain, the Cloud Gouger guy, which was also really just fun way to end that chapter recently. It knows what it's doing. It's really just honing in on just pure action battle shonen stuff. Just having these two characters like on either side of this massive double page spread facing off each other. It's just the kind of thing you think of when you think of hype battle shonen. And I'm glad we have something like that in the magazine that's new. Other stuff, I really like its art. It's got some just great battle scenes, really good just spreads and compositions. The fish effect with Chihiro's sword, I also really like. It's such a cool and unique thing to have as your kind of main power. The swords themselves as well, just fun power system. Like magical swords are always cool. And having like a set number of them and knowing there's a specific amount of them is a really cool just thingy, I guess. I don't know what the right word would be. Yeah, like we know there's like, what, 6 swords plus 1 or something like that. So we'll see them eventually in the story. And then they also have this interesting connection with Chihiro and his dad, which is really cool. And we get some flashbacks now and again as well. One thing a few people don't like is Chihiro's deadpan face. I think it's really funny. Just unintentional comedy, or maybe intentional. We'll see. He just
it's
like
intentional.
Does not have any emotions, and I find that hilarious sometimes. But maybe we'll see him break at some point, and that'll be a huge like moment. I'm excited to see it just keep going. I hope it stays. We'll have to see when the volume comes out in February, but I think actually you know more about that stuff.
Yeah. So, and which I want to talk about the unnatural start to this manga first before actually discussing it itself. So, this manga blew up partly because the standard leakers and fan translators decided to be like, "Whoa, guys, check out the first chapter of like this new series," like before it even got released, and then the audacity to actually fan translate the chapter like a day or two before it officially legally released. They fan translated it, which is just mind-boggling to me, because it's just like most fan translators, if they're going to poach a legally free translated series, usually wait like a couple chapters or whatnot to find out what the lingo is and then incorporate that into their own translations. But no, because clout and clickbait and whatnot, they decided, we're gonna fan translate this before its first chapter even releases. And then past that, it became this giant meme that everybody was in on, and it was like the big thing to be like, oh man, Kagurabachi is like so amazing, like, oh my god, Kagurabachi first chapter and it already has an anime, and like the guy who voices Zenitsu in English lent his voice to a fan animation of Chihiro. It was insane. Like that was the entire conversation for like the first 3 chapters, which is like, oh, Kagurabachi is already the peak, the zenith, the amazing manga of all time, without actually discussing the chapter. And it frustrated the hell out of me, because when you get past the memeing, it's actually a decent manga. Honestly, it's better than decent. It's been steadily improving chapter upon chapter. But the problem is, so many people wanted to meme it right away that they didn't have genuine interaction with the manga itself. So you've got this unfortunate state where it's kind of in limbo, in that like there's still this misconception of like, oh, Kagurabachi is just a meme, it's not necessarily quality, when it actually is. And you have other people that aren't doing it any favors, because the typical Twitter discourse is like, oh, X, Y, and Z is peak, and ABC is trash, instead of like actually having discourse on why these things are. So it's going to be interesting to see how the first volume sells in February, because it's such an unnatural start to this manga. And like so much so that it was like the only newbie series that really got discussion at Jump Festa, like that it actually got brought up. Like it was that big of a deal. Like they've talked about it on talk shows and whatnot in Japan. To Crash's point, KFC Portugal decided to incorporate it into an online advertisement. So how does that interest actually translate into sales? I'm very curious to see how that works out. I'm curious to see how many international people actually, dip their hands into buying the first volume. Will it surpass all expectations? Will it be all of a sudden this manga that sells incredibly well? Because at least in the last few years, the only one that really, did that on debut was Rory Dragon, but that one was also an outlier because how many people bought that because they were being sympathetic to, the author for being on hiatus. Like we'll never actually know how much of that original sale was inflated due to that or whatnot. But it's going to be interesting to see. I think that being said, I think it is still going to sell well. The question is, how many thousands of units is it actually going to sell? But that's enough about that. Let's actually talk about the manga itself on my end. Like I said, I enjoy it. This is one where Chihiro, yes, he's deadpan all the time, but he fights really well. I'm going to make the comparison. He's MASH in a serious battle manga. He's MASH from Mashal. Let's not get it twisted in terms of like how he kind of interacts and whatnot. He's not. That being said, then he's paired with characters that are the funny ones, and he is the deadpan because that is just standard comedy. That's how Char is. That's how Mr. Shiba is. That's how his dad was. That's just kind of how the interaction is. Whether or not that's your cup of tea, it is what it is. But the actual fighting itself is really good. I'm not going to say that it has good choreography, because it doesn't yet. That's Sakamoto days, when you can actually feel the movement going from page to page. That is choreography. When it is just, good positioning and whatnot, going from page to page, that is good composition. So that I do think that Kagurabachi has. I think it does have good composition. It has pages where it lets things breathe. Compared to Shadow Eliminators. And despite being as new as it is, this is one where the characters are already developing in terms of their fighting ability and whatnot. Chihiro and the main villain, the wielder of Cloud Gouger, have already learned from each other and have incorporated that into their own techniques. On top of that, there's a really great battle of philosophy between the two characters, because Chihiro, obviously his father was the one that made the enchanted blades, and he believes that they were not meant to be, these weapons for just killing, compared to the wielder of Cloud Gouger, where it's like, these swords were absolutely meant for killing, and like that is their purpose, that is their peak, and I idolize the creator of these swords, and it's this clash of ideals. There are great talking points in this manga, and on top of that, everybody loves Char. Everybody wants to protect Char. She is this adorable character. There are a lot of good selling points to Kagurabachi, and I want there to be more discussion on it. I honestly wish that it had been a more natural progression, but that's not where we are at this point in time. And to be fair, because of the unnatural reception that it had, that is possibly why it will potentially sell really well. So it's a weird conundrum of feelings to have. But I do really think that it's a good manga. It is a good Shonen Jump series. It is still memeable. because that's just kind of how it's going to be. But I don't think that the memes should at this point be the bigger talking point when there's actually really good stuff happening. And we'll see how this cliffhanger battle that we had in the last double issue ends up. But it's a really good series. I hope more people actually read it and support it, and then it gets to continue on.
Yeah, I think that is something where it got so memed, but it's kind of I wonder how many people do still read the manga. I know there's a lot of like people who really don't pay attention to like this subculture of Weekly Shonen Jump, of like paying attention to the rookies and everything, that kind of got introduced to it via Kagurabachi. So I'm kind of curious how many of them are still reading, how many of them are actually getting into other manga.
Yeah.
And,
Even as a small kind of like Jump YouTube channel, I've had I think a couple of people join my server just because of Kagurabachi. So there's definitely a few people who've gone into Jump from that, even if the majority have kind of like jumped off just because it was a meme for them.
yeah. I'm not sure if you've ever been into the subreddit of Kagurabachi. I'm kind of curious to see how it is now, but the first couple of weeks, I would say that like the first month of it, memes. Just exclusively memes. So I'm kind of curious to go to it and see if there's actually discussion now. We'll see. As for now, we're going to move into the top 3. On number 3, we got Tenmaku Cinema with 157 positive points, 52 negative, 105 total. It was number 4 on the voters list, number 6 on Axel's, number 1 on Trentin, and number 3 on mine. This is a manga that I think is genuinely beautiful in terms of like the story that it's telling. I think it is also a really good short story, even though it is a manga that got cancelled. It's one of the 3 manga that got cancelled. Do Retry, I Said Gill, and then we got Tenmaku Cinema way over the top. And the difference between this one and the other 2, which is something I really do appreciate, is that you can read this, even though it is cancelled. You can read this, you can enjoy it as it is. There are a couple of loose ends that kind of are a little bit of a negative as a whole package, as it is right now, which is like the actual Tenmaku, the ghost, the plot of the Fang, things that are introduced for a long-running story that it does not end up being, and because of that it doesn't really get the development that it should. But that is like a negative that we have to have an asterisk on. It's a negative because the manga got cancelled. It's not necessarily a negative because the manga was badly structured. But the manga is removing those aspects. The manga about this director kid, student that is doing a student movie, and he manages to get a popular actress who's also a student, and now she manages to learn more about herself and about the show business through this small indie movie, and how they're really, really passionate about it. I think it's a really good story, and one of my favorite axed manga in Shonen Jump as a whole. It's not over Gravity Boys, because Gravity Boys is just absolute fun, would always be, but it is still like one of the best canceled manga in my opinion. Yeah,
I definitely agree. I'll go first so Trenton can gush about it last.
Yay!
But you're welcome. Tenmaku Cinema, I think when you approach it as a short series, is good. When you treat it as a limited run series, and I think people in general need to have a different perception on axed manga. Just because it was axed doesn't necessarily mean that it was bad. And you can still enjoy certain things from axed manga, and potentially use that as fuel to search out for other things in the future that you would like similarly. Like, oh, I really liked this element of this series. Maybe there's another one that's ongoing or finished that is similar to it. So there is always value in reading an axed or short serialization series, and I think more people need to adjust and acknowledge that, because too many people are like, oh, it got axed, it's not worth it, don't need to read it. Like, no, this is one where it's definitely worth reading. Seeing the fun and the passion of filmmaking in this series was really fun, and it was enjoyable seeing the interactions between our main characters, seeing Shinichi, the main character himself, Tenmaku, Himeki, the actress, seeing those three interact in various ways was a positive. The negatives, I think, in terms of things that could have been changed in order for the series to have lasted longer. I didn't like the aspect that Tenmaku was a ghost, and that he was more or less haunting Shinichi as he was trying to get the Fang created and whatnot. It took away from the series as a whole because, like you mentioned, Crash, it didn't get resolved in the end, and that's definitely an unfortunate thing. It could have been changed where Tenmaku absolutely could have been a living character. They could have changed how he was brought up and whatnot and maintained his character personality, and I think it would have been better to have those two bouncing off of each other and bouncing off of other characters. That's at least my personal interpretation for that. The other thing is that compared to Shokugeki no Soma, Food Wars, the duo's previous work, the other side characters were nowhere near as interesting as the side characters that we had in Food Wars. And I think that's another thing where it wasn't necessarily bouncing off of people as much. I personally thought it was better that we didn't have the Ichi focus that Food Wars had. That was its own selling point. But I think changing Tenmaku and some of the side characters could have made it something that allowed it to be a long-running series. But looking past that, looking at what we got as a whole, at least, I think viewing it as a short series was great. And I'm glad that it didn't rush the ending and that it stuck with the arc that it was currently in and giving us a satisfying ending to that, rather than what we got with Do Retry or with Head Gill. If we had gotten something similar to that, I wouldn't have enjoyed the ending as much as I did. But because it did end, that's why I still stuck it in the middle of my list. Because I really enjoyed it, but I couldn't put it above the ones that are continuing, at least for now, that I did enjoy a little bit more and see a longer life for them potentially in the manga. In the magazine. But like I said, I'm gonna let Trenton go last on this because he deserves the time to talk about his number one.
Yeah, so this is my number one. I think, like Axel said, people should give Axe manga a chance more, because even though they're over and their potential is gone, it doesn't necessarily mean they're bad, and you can still really enjoy them. And that's kind of something I like in Jump overall, is enjoying things week to week and enjoying them for what they are or ultimately like end up being. There's a kind of almost meditation-esque kind of thing surrounding that, like living in the present, just enjoying something for what it is. And in the case of Tenmaku Cinema, it's something really good as well. I enjoyed it like every single week, and even though it ended not on the terms it wanted to, it closed out really well, in my opinion. There are some loose ends with Tenmaku specifically, but everything else just, you could just shave off some edges and it'd be a perfect little short story. So you get some nice closure there. But it's what the story is about, really, that I really just love. It is a work about creativity and making things. It's about making film, and that's something I really like. Just seeing the process of all the characters working together, learning how to film things properly, like doing all these little, I guess, low budget film hacks, and also teaching you like buying a like little tripod for your phone and filming isn't actually that expensive. I don't know, there was something really nice and earnest about that. There's something really I think the love of film and creating comes off from this duo in this work, and the lack of ecchi stuff, I feel like highlights that. Like they really wanted to focus on making a manga about making film and being creative. The other thing I really love about this series is its atmosphere. Just like Two on Ice, it has just the way it's drawn, the way the characters interact and stuff. It conveys a lot of warmth to me. Maybe because of how lighting and weather and things are depicted, it just has a really nice tone and makes me feel warm inside. And that's kind of why I think we read manga a lot of the time, or that's when we find a manga that we really enjoy or just vibe with. It makes us feel things, and not necessarily like some big scene where you cry or like you're happy or you're angry or whatever, but just this like consistent feeling. And it gave me that throughout its run, which I really, really appreciate. The other things I like about this manga are kind of small bits, like Tenmaku being a ghostly figure that goes on to haunt this young boy is very much in line with things like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Hikaru no Go. It's one of my favorite tropes ever. So just that being in the manga makes it something I like. And yeah, good art as expected from the artist of this duo. Nice little story. And I'm a little sad it didn't last a bit longer, but they wrapped it up really well. And because of that, it is my number one.
Just on the topic of enjoying next manga, I also need people to understand that sometimes I think sometimes Jump throws these manga to die, essentially, because they always want to keep putting new manga, and so that sometimes the magazine is already full. If the magazine has 15 solid titles, they will continue to publish more manga, but those manga don't, even if they are good, they're not really gonna survive unless they somehow like get sales that are enough for the magazine to kick another manga that should be safe. We've seen that happen a couple of times. Things like High School Family being kicked off and things like that. But for the most part, these manga can be very good and they can still die because the magazine does not have space and Jump wants to throw new manga at them still. I don't really agree with their methods 100% of the time, but they're not going to change.
I'm conflicted because on the one hand, I do agree with the process itself, because there is worth in competition. There is that worth of striving to do your best, to be the best, to beat out other competitors and whatnot, and keep your series alive. So I think that there is good to it. On top of that, people do want to see new things. So I think Jump has a pretty good cycle, at least typically, where they are introducing a new series or batch every 10, 13 issues, typically. So it's not like, it's not like we're getting new stuff all the time. We're typically getting new things 4 to 5 times per year, unless there's some wacky things just kind of introduced at random points in time. We don't really get that anymore. That is usually more of an older Jump kind of thing, where they just kind of willy-nilly threw new stuff in every once in a while. Back when the axe was actually more deadly and came down sooner on a lot more things. So I think it is better because there are other magazines where they're more lenient, but then you have a series that's just kind of that's sitting there for a longer period of time. There is still worth in being part of Shonen Jump, in beating out other people to be in that magazine, because getting there in the first place is already an accomplishment, especially when you consider the fact that there are hundreds upon hundreds of manga out there at a time, and you were chosen to be in the magazine. Don't get me wrong, it still sucks when a series that you really enjoyed, that like you were like, oh, this is new, this is something I like enjoy, when it gets axed. Like it does suck. But to Trenton's point from before, it's still a great experience to be there for the ride of it. So it sucks, but it's a necessary evil in order to provide, that next big hit.
I think as well as like they get a shot and stuff, it also just means the magazine has a lot of variety because it's constantly cycling stuff. You get a lot of different manga, you get a lot of different things to read, and I think that's really cool as well. You'll see all sorts of different genres and stuff like come around. Even though sometimes they focus heavily on like battle shonen or like this year's sports, there's still a lot of variety in them. And even if like the majority don't last like 30 chapters, you get a little taste of those different genres and those different authors as well, which is really cool.
Moving into number 2, we got the final sports manga of the list. It is Martial Master Asumi with 220 positive votes, 32 negative, total of 188. It got number 3 on the voters list, number 2 on Axel's, number 7 on Trenton's, and number 2 on mine. So Trenton again with the hot takes. I really like this. So this is why the mangaka did Inomaru Zumo, and I didn't read Inomaru Zumo. This is the first manga from him that I've been reading. Now my experience with Inomaru Zumo from just having people talked about is that it was a good manga, but it's just there. That was kind of like the idea that I had. But now I kind of want to go back and kind of want to read it because Master Martial Azumi is really good. Again, it is in a year where we did get, I think, pretty solid sports manga like Two on Ice, like Green Green Greens, MMA, which is the initials. It still reigned on top, at least for me. It is a manga where I think the sport was really well drawn. It is dynamic. It is really well shown. You get excited for the matches and the bouts. We get a lot of variety between the characters and their sport and their techniques. Plus, I think the main character is pretty cool. I think the main female character is even cooler. I really like the dynamic. I kind of like the romantic feeling that he has for her, that she just doesn't even care, doesn't even notice. Yeah. I think I love all the designs of all the characters. It has a really solid style of it. And I think just overall it's a really, really solid manga. I hope it survives with the sales that it's getting. It may not. I'm hoping that the editors like the author enough that it can stay a little while, because rumors are from the Inomaru Zumo times that they really like him. But how true that is or not, we don't know. It's just rumors. But yeah, it is a great manga. I think you guys should read it.
I also think it's pretty great too. It is lower down on my list. It's a 7, but I think it's really solid in every aspect. Its art's really nice. It has good technical explanations of all the MMA. It has some good characters as well, and a good variety of characters. The spotlight on female MMA is really cool as well. So we probably had like as much female MMA as we've had like male MMA now, which is really cool. I think the only reason it's kind of lower down for me is I just don't really have a personal connection to anything. I like a lot of the characters. I like Asumi. I like the female main character as well. The side cast, they're building up a lot of people as well recently because you need a lot of people for sport combat series. Yeah, I think I said this before in the previous recording. I like sports combat series that are a bit wilder, like Baki the Grappler and Kengan Ashura. I think I just need a bit more crazy in my sports series.
You need to do retry.
Maybe I need the Dora try,
Oh,
but
Do retry
oh,
is a
people
lot
are gonna
more
hate
wacky.
me. I brought up Red Blue last time as well, which is in Shonen Sunday as another newish MMA series, and I just think that series has a bit more of an angle going for it with its main character and how he's like. And Martial Master Asumi, I feel, is a little bit more straight, and maybe that's why I'm not absolutely in love with it. But yeah, really solid series.
Yeah. Meanwhile, it's my number 2. I love MMA, and I believe I'm the only person here that did actually read Hinomaru Sumo from the first time around, and it's one of my favorite sports series. The only unfortunate thing for MMA at that point in time, for Hinomaru when it originally debuted, is that it was in the shadow of Haikyuu, and that was a very large shadow that it cast. So, despite that, it was a really great series. It even had a 24 episode anime that came out, so that's a positive as well. MMA though, I love MMA because I love how the mangaka draws his action in a sports sense. Everything is composited really well. It's dynamic, it's fun, the characters are interesting. They have their different personalities, they have their different quirks with how they fight and whatnot. And finding out that it is technically a sequel to Hinomaru Sumo as well has me kind of like, oh, does that mean maybe we'll get some other characters from, Hinomaru in this? Probably not, but that potential is there, and I am desperately holding on to that very slim possibility, but I digress. One of the other things, though, that MMA does really well is it discusses the family dynamic. And you have the family dynamic with Chihiro, and you have oh my god, not Chihiro, with Nito Asumi. I was looking at my Kagurabachi notes in terms of names instead of the MMA ones. So you have the family dynamics with Asumi, and you have the family dynamics with Ayako, the female main character. And it's really interesting to see the differences between the two. With Ayako, her dad is obviously super protective of her. The fact that she gets seriously injured and he is concerned about, her getting injured again. But the fact of the matter is, she is a great MMA fighter, and she's continuing to grow, and she's building that trust with her dad in a professional sense. And then you have Asumi with his family. The fact that his grandfather was this super amazing martial artist, but because of dementia, he has regressed so much mentally, except when he's performing martial arts. You have that dynamic with him. You have the dynamic with his older brother and how he interacted with their grandfather, and how the main character interacts with his brother. And you find out that not everything's not black and white between the two. And I really enjoy the fact that we get to see this change in mental state, and the growth as things go on, especially with Asumi himself. And speaking to the whole crazy thing that Trenton mentioned, when there is one fight where he does have that switch flipped, it's pretty great, I'm not gonna lie.
I will say,
but overall,
sorry, I'm not always a big fan of suddenly he has a dark version of himself. I'm hoping it is not 100% that, where it's like different personality, like Anti-Nito or something like that. I hope it's not that.
It wasn't necessarily that it was a dark personality, more so he was so in the moment of enjoying the fight, and that his limiters were kind of removed. Because the thing is, I won't I won't lie, Hinamaru Zumo does have a dark kind of switch flip in that series with the main character, as well as a few others. And I think it's really well done in how they do it, though. So like, even if there is like a dark personality switch flip, the author has done it before and he's done it well, so I wouldn't be as concerned. But even then, I don't think it's necessarily that there's a dark personality with him. More so, it's like that loose, really enjoying the fight and not having those same limiters because he's in like super martial art mode rather than like, oh, this is MMA, there are rules and there's restraints.
My word is,
but
I we're gonna keep digressing. My problem is that like he forgot that like when he was fighting. I don't know. I'm just worried. It may still. I trust you that he's done it before and done it well. But that was the one point in the story where I was like, I'm not sure I like where this is going.
I think that was one of my favorite parts to contrast. Like when he did
You're
the
wrong,
big knee.
Crash. We disagree. But no, I guess my one concern though, and we've kind of alluded to this, is that Martial Master Asumi's sales have not been as great. They're not bad by like other standards, but the first volume sold like about 9,000 or so in its first week and then kind of petered off after that. With volume 2, we haven't gotten actual sales numbers yet. I was trying to look them up actually while we were recording, and I haven't seen updated numbers yet. But I do know that the second volume kind of slipped below what the first volume did. So it is in the hot seat, and that is unfortunate. I hope that it can be saved. I hope that like it does change, but it is in that danger zone. And I mean, I'll be blunt, even if they tried switching it over to Manga Plus, it wouldn't necessarily increase the sales at all. It would still be kind of delaying the inevitable if it's not able to improve. And it's really unfortunate because I think we all agree, for the most part, this has been the best sports series of the year, aside from Greens in this magazine specifically, at least. So I'm hoping at least one of the two of them survives. I would love it if both did, but I have to be grounded in reality. That for the most part, sales are king. And there are very few exceptions to that rule, mainly if you're a gag series, and MMA is not, unfortunately, and Roboco more or less has that thrown to itself for the time being until something comes around that's different. But regardless of any doom and gloom we might have, definitely read it if you are a sports enjoyer and or if you've already read Hinamaru Zumo. But that being said, if you've already read Hinamaru Zumo, then you're already probably reading MMA. Let's be honest here. So, yeah.
The final one, number 1, it is MamaYuyu. 326 positive votes, 41 negative, 285 total. Number 2 on the voters list, number 1 on Axel, number 1 on Crashes, that's me, and number 2 on Trendons.
Wait, that's me.
I think this was one where pretty much everyone agrees, even if it's not, they don't agree it's the best. I think pretty much everyone agrees that it is one of the better series of the year. I think part of that is visually, it's really beautiful. The paneling of it is really dynamic, it's really different, it's really interesting. It is not the same kind of like paneling or flow like something like Sakamoto Days or something like Dragon Ball, or something like early One Piece. Later One Piece we can argue about. But what it is something a little bit more similar to something like Witch Hat Atelier, where you look at it and it's just, holy shit, this is different from anything I've ever seen in manga. And it just captures you. And in that regard, it is different still than Witch Hat Atelier. It has a lot of like the VFX mixing with the panels, mixing with the characters. It has things falling out of the panels. It has things jumping panel to the other. It is beautiful to look at. I think that engages, that grabs people to read more. But even going past that, I think the characters are some of the most fun we've had this year. Corleo and Minerva and the other female character that the name starts with E,
Alicia.
They're all great. Their interactions are great. The way that we have all these other characters moving, jumping into the world of Corleo, and the way that their world functions differently from Corleo's, and the way that they act and then interact with this world because of it, because of their expectations, with what humans are supposed to be, what demons are supposed to be, the fact that some of these worlds they're at peace, some of them they're at war, has been really interesting to read. And it also had one of my favorite chapter ones. I think the end, I think was how the monster was called, was, as someone who loves horror, as someone who loves something like H.R. Geiger, it was just something that I fell in love instantly. We've had a little bits of that scattered through the manga, but nothing again on the same level. But I do hope we get again. But yeah, I think the main antagonist as of now, while he has the worst design of the bunch, I do think he's been interesting. I do think he's the kind of villain that I enjoy. It reminds me of something like Hao from Shaman King, for example, where it's one of my favorite villains in Jump, the way that they can just jump, no pun intended, into with the characters, interact with them and speak, and then be kind of goofy, be kind of threatening. I do like that, and it is just my favorite manga of the year, essentially.
You mean you don't like the fact that the Grisha's head looks like Magu-chan? You don't like that crap?
I love Magu-chan.
Last time we recorded it, I couldn't remember Magu-chan's name, and I was thinking it the entire time, and I was just like, it just clicked for me now. But no, I agree though. This was my number one for the year, just because it did so many things right. The art style itself, take it or leave it. It is one where it's not necessarily polished. There is a bit of grit to it. It's not the same grit that you have in Kagurabachi. It's definitely not the same grit you get in Jujutsu Kaisen. But it's got its rough around the edges look here and there. But the character designs are fun. And the fact that you have these different heroes and demon lords from different worlds allows them to have, completely different vibes to them, despite the fact that, again, they are different heroes and demon lords from different worlds. And it's just the sheer difference between Corleo and Mamama compared to Evan and End from the first chapter is just kind of like, whoa, what? So I agree with the fact that it had the best first chapter of the year. You could take that first chapter by itself, and it's a great story as it is. But it has continued to build upon that and be a fun series as a whole. Paneling is its biggest strength in terms of its creativity. Like we mentioned with Witch Hat Atelier, it's one where it's not just, box, long box. It does things that visually entertain the eye, where like a sword can slash through panels, or with End where it was like crumpling in on itself and like the panels like shrink in further and further. It really does fun things with it. And even when you do have the pages that let it breathe and like show off the action or the character designs, it really works well. I enjoy the dynamics between Corleo, Minerva, and Alicia. I think that they're a fun trio of characters. In terms of the faults that I have, because it's not a 100% perfect series.
How dare you?
They let Mamama go way too early in this series. I get why they did it in terms of the main character Grisha's motives and what he's doing, but when you take out one of the supposedly two main characters from the get-go, it does hurt the progression of things. The other thing too is that Grisha himself, again, his motives are evil. Like, the way that he's going about things are evil. But he is a character that he is like naturally like joyous and goofy and whatnot, and that can be a turnoff for certain characters. He's no Millennium Earl from D. Gray Man, where he's, you know, a goofy guy, but like causing like death and panic around him, and it's fun. Like, for Grisha, it can be a little bit grating at times, so I can get that. But overall, it's a really great series. Its biggest problem is that it got introduced right after Kagurabachi, and Kagurabachi created this massive shadow over MamaYuyu. View-wise, it was still doing good. Jump still gave it and Two on Ice, again, for whatever reason, the same treatment where they gave each of them 3 color pages, which is kind of unheard of, to give 3 series that, regardless of popularity. But it will be interesting to see how its sales perform in February, because, you know, unfortunately speaking, if it doesn't do well enough, it could be on that chopping block, which hurts me tremendously, because this series is one that I love. So I hope it can bounce back from it, because there's more stories to be told. There's more heroes, there's more demon lords to meet and engage with, and I hope we get to see more. But that's my take, and I'll let Trenton go from here.
Yeah, so this is, I guess, my top manga that's currently still in the magazine. So it's number 1 somehow. It is great. The thing that stands out to me mostly is the artwork. Being a fan of just manga and comics in general, seeing it experiment and be creative with its paneling is a joy. Like, every chapter, I love when it does all its little things where it just does so much with it. It really pushes what manga can be. Like Crash, you made the comparison with Witch Hat Atelier, which is universally praised for its artwork and how fun it is. I think if this continues, it'll be the same deal. And this author in general, hopefully, if you get asked, I hope he makes another series that's just as creative as this. The designs as well, I love how all the characters look. Minerva is super cool. I think she's probably one of my favorites. I think I really like Grisha. I do agree with the weird like ear magu things, but when he's wearing like his hat and stuff, I'm pretty sure he wore a hat at one point. He looks really menacing and cool.
When he was hiding the whole
Yeah,
end is part of me thing.
And now he's kind of more goofy, which I also like. I think it's going to grow a bit more, though. The other characters as well, like all the villains and stuff they've introduced recently, have been cool. And I'm excited to see where it goes. And I hope it gets the time to just breathe and sells well. I'm really excited for February, mainly for MamaYuyu. I really want to know. I just want to know that it did well, it's selling well, that it'll stay. The concept as well, overall, I just think is really fun. When I heard the rumblings of an isekai series being in Jump, I was like, uh-oh, because I'm not a massive fan of those. It's not my favorite trend, but the way it's incorporated in this to be like a reverse isekai mixed with a battle royale kind of thing is such a good idea to introduce all these wild and wacky characters. And they all have different powers as well, and the stock system is interesting, where Corleo has limited uses of whatever powers he has. I like them as well. He's got like levitation, healing, and did he get another one recently? I can't remember. I'm a little fire. I'm a little thing on that because everyone else seems to have one, and he's getting a bunch of them. But maybe they'll put a good reason why in there at some point. But it's just everything I'm looking for really in a series. It's just good art and enjoyable every week. It does what it's doing well. Don't know what else I could really say about it other than I really hope it doesn't get axed.
Same.
Yeah. I am scared though because I'm not sure how well it has been doing on the table of content. Has been a little bit out of it, but from what I remember, it's not doing super well. Although I don't think most new series are. So we'll have to see. That is the list. Do you guys have something to say about 2024 for Jump?
I hope it's good. It will be. I enjoy every year.
Yeah. It's always fun.
It's gonna be another tight year in that regard. The only manga that we know is ending for sure this year, at least it better, is My Hero Academia.
It
If they
has
somehow
to.
squeeze into 2025, I'm just gonna be flabbergasted because we're ending all these other plot points. Just let it end.
Only if we get so many breaks that.
You're right. So MHA is the one that we know is ending, and should be ending this year. Jujutsu Kaisen is ending, but probably not this year. Mission Yozakura family is in its final arc, so it could end sometime. It will probably end sometime this year. Honestly speaking, it could even end while the anime is airing, if I'm being completely honest, depending on what they want to keep and what they don't want to keep running.
However, I will say that Jump tends to prioritize, like, if a manga has an anime running, to at least stay until the anime ends. Probably because, like, to appease the studios and channels and everything.
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, because that, yeah. So, if anything, it would potentially end when the anime's first season ends.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that being said, Mission Yozakura is probably ending this year. It could go into next year, but just the way that the story is going, I don't think it will. Past that, I think Cypher Academy is also coming to an end, just based on how the manga is currently going. Could it get another arc after this one? Sure. Will it? Probably not. The sales have been kind of dying down, and for a Nisio Isen series, like, sales aren't great. That being said, he has so many different series anyway, so it's not necessarily new that he would have a series that doesn't really sell well. So, I mean, I just want to kind of put that out there.
Is he even, like, just working on the series? Because I get a feeling that he's always working like 20 things. Probably doesn't even.
I mean, he's the author rather than the artist. So, I mean, like, I guess being the author, it's still work, don't get me wrong, but you're not necessarily doing the heavy lifting in terms of the output every week compared to the artists and, like, the assistants. Past that, though, in terms of new stuff, I'm interested to see what we can possibly get this year. It absolutely is possible that we'll still get another sports series this year, just to see again what sticks. So we could absolutely see, like, a baseball or soccer manga at some point in time. I know we are getting an Eye Shield 21 chapter in 2024, and I'm elated about that. But, like, more football could even be interesting. But I know, like, Jump Plus has a rugby series going on right now, so do you really want to compete with that?
I was
you never
confused
know.
for a second, then I remembered football is American.
Yeah, sorry, American football.
You are
not
the
soccer
American.
football.
Most
I am the American in the group here. Yeah. But no, I don't want to see an Exorcist series in 2024. I want to see. We probably still will. You're right. I'd love to see an actual adventure manga,
please,
introduced and do well again, because it's been a while since we've had one that has stuck. Um, I'm excited for more Hunter x Hunter in 2024. However many chapters of that we actually get. I think we're gonna get Rory Dragon back this year. At least I hope so.
Really hope
But
so.
will it come back to the magazine? I don't think it will. I think they'll switch it over to Jump Plus, if I'm being honest.
It makes more sense.
Just so it can be on a more lenient schedule. Not to mention how they labeled the first volume, I believe was similar to how they label the Jump Plus stuff compared to the Shonen Jump stuff. But again, could be wrong on that. I only say that too just because like every other Jump Plus hiatus series has come back already so far. So Rory Dragon hopefully is in a similar vein to that. But I will at least kind of grounding myself again. I will keep my expectations in line. Just because again the magazine is still full. More often than not, they're going to allow series that are already running to run their course rather than cutting them short at this point because they've been running long enough. But even then, I am still hopeful that we get something really cool that sticks out. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. I do want to mention real quick Gold Future Cup winners because I can't remember if we know the one for this year, but I think 2022's winner was Koi no Yobi no Sasaki-san, which I covered in my Gold Future Cup video, and that's this really interesting kind of rom-com. I'd really like to see that become a full series because I think it definitely has some potential. Or the author does something else. But since it's the Gold Future Cup, they're like entitled to a series. We might see them because the one before that was Fabricum 100, and we've already gotten that.
I'm always leery of award winners getting their series and Jump because they almost always flop.
Yep, that's the Gold Future Cup curse. I want to see it broken though.
Yeah, Beelzebub is like the one that broke that curse, but that was
Nura
years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm more curious is to see exactly what they really focus on. I feel like they've been, like, for example, they were focusing on a while on gag manga. And then now they got Roboko. It doesn't seem like this year we didn't get a gag manga. Instead, we are getting a lot of sports now. I think once we get that sports manga that's hit, we're gonna stop at least for a little bit, or at least decrease the number of sports manga. But then it leaves like, what is left right now in the magazine to fill? Because I think we kind of have almost everything but sports, but a solid sports manga running. So I'm curious what we're gonna get in that regard. Personally, I know this is something that a lot of people will not like. I like a Narum series. I like to have another Nisekoi, another We'd Never Learn, another Ichigo 100%. Doesn't necessarily have to be ecchi. Nisekoi wasn't, and I think it was pretty solid. Blue Box is a rom-com, but I don't think it is exactly the same kind of manga as a We Never Learn, for example. So I kind of would have liked to see that.
I wouldn't even necessarily say though that Blue Box is rom-com. It's a romance sports series. There's comedic moments,
A Ross Paul,
but that's not necessarily the focus compared to like series that you mentioned, like We Never Learned or Nisekoi, where there is a more comedic element to the romance. So we don't really have a rom-com specifically in Jump right now.
Yeah, I'd like to see that because it's my favorite genre. But yeah, everything else, I think the next year is going to be similar to this year and to the previous year, where we did have like the more lenient years in Jump where there was a lot of space. That's not been the case in a while. And I think next year is going to be the year where a lot of like these series that are solid in the magazine but are not really big in the anime community in general are going to become big. We saw that with Mashal, we're seeing that with Undead Unluck. I'm hoping we see that with things like Sakamoto Days, Zakana Banashi, Blue Box, Yozoguro Family. As these series are starting to get anime, we're going to like Jump hopefully the conversations of Jump is dying, oh my god, are gonna end, or at least diminish, because we need that. And I'm hoping they do. I hope 2024 is a year where we have this series jump to the forefront and people are really sort of like paying attention to them in the mainstream, because I know a lot of people, the people who watch this video, they are aware of them. They're probably reading them because you're watching it. It's what, 2-hour video on Two on Ice. You know of these series, but hopefully they will become more mainstream. And yeah, that is kind of what I'm hoping for 2024. If you've watched till this point, I think we are on the 2.5-hour mark again. Do go follow Axel Ablaze. Do go follow Trentin Hart. Their channels will be on the description below. Trentin does a lot of videos on Shonen Jump. He also does the occasional video on whatever he wants, but he has really good videos on the Jump history. Axel has really great videos on Jump from 2021. But
I didn't make the 2021 video. I only made 2020. No, I am working on a new video. At the very least, I am coming back for 2024. I am going to start out the year with my manga agenda, my 2024 manga agenda video, where I am going to discuss non-Shonen Jump series that I think people should read for this year. But I'm going to kind of go back to my roots a bit and do more recommendation style videos and whatnot, and really put a spotlight on other series that need to be talked about, because there are other people that talk about Shonen Jump a little bit better than myself. And
Sure
I really want to highlight stuff that really does deserve a read, and things that are actually better than what is currently running in the Shonen Jump magazine. But do look forward to that. It shouldn't be that much longer, hopefully, from when this video comes out. So yeah.
I'm also sorry for how late this video is coming out, because again, we had to re-record and I'm gonna have to edit this video again. But if you stick till here, well, thank you very much, and I'll see you next video.
Bye.